In a world where fame and ambition often overshadow loyalty and integrity, Robert Duvall's journey through Hollywood is a story of betrayal, principle, and quiet rebellion. From idolizing the legends of cinema to walking away from the very giants he once called friends, Duvall's path reveals the hidden cost of staying true to yourself in an industry built on ego. But what happens when an actor chooses family over fame? This is the untold story of the Hollywood giants who became his enemies and the legacy he built, not on the stage, but in the silence of his principles. Robert Duvall has long been known as one of Hollywood's most respected actors, admired not just for his talent, but for his commitment to authenticity and discipline. He first captured the world's attention with his portrayal of Tom Hagen in The Godfather, a role that earned him critical acclaim and set the stage for an extraordinary career. Throughout his life, Duvall has built a reputation for being honest and focused on his craft. Unlike many others in the industry, he has often stayed away from the chaos that Hollywood can bring, preferring instead a quieter, more grounded life. His work ethic and dedication to his roles have always been his defining traits. In a business full of egos and drama, Duvall remained the calm, disciplined figure. However, behind the scenes, Duvall's journey through Hollywood has been marked by complex relationships, some of which ended in bitter rivalries with some of the biggest names in the industry. These weren't just any names, they were giants, people he once considered friends, mentors, or even brothers. But as time passed, these relationships fractured, and Duvall found himself at odds with some of the most influential figures in Hollywood history. The story isn't just about the roles they played on screen, but the far more dramatic, darker truth of what happened off-screen. The list of Hollywood figures Duvall would eventually name as his enemies is as surprising as it is shocking. Some of these men were his idols. Others were colleagues who once shared moments of true camaraderie. Yet, as the years went by, what seemed like brotherhood and respect turned into silent resentment. What Duvall revealed later, in his older years, shocked everyone's stories about the betrayals, misunderstandings, and ego-driven decisions that ultimately tore apart friendships that once seemed unbreakable. The biggest shock came when Duvall finally broke his silence and named the Hollywood giants he could no longer call allies. These were the very people he had once looked up to, worked with, and even called friends. What Duvall had to say about them changed how we see Hollywood and its complex relationships. His honesty was a reflection of how far the industry had come and how far it had strayed from the values he once cherished. The truth he revealed about these giants and the choices they made would forever change the way we think about the industry. As Duvall grew older, the lessons of his life and career became clearer, and when he finally spoke up, the world was left stunned. What he shared, and the names he mentioned, are nothing short of extraordinary. The Hollywood we thought we knew would never be the same again. Robert Duvall and Al Pacino once shared more than just screen time, they shared a bond that went beyond acting. In the early days of their careers, both men were struggling to find their place in Hollywood. It was the early 1972, a time when both were still climbing the ladder of fame. They became close friends, living together in an apartment in Beverly Glen. Their relationship was one of camaraderie and mutual respect, built on long nights of dreams, struggles, and ambition. They had each other's backs in a cutthroat industry, often scraping by on small budgets and basic meals like canned noodles. Theirs was a friendship formed out of hardship and shared dreams of making it big in Hollywood. Their bond was solidified when they worked together on The Godfather, a film that would define their careers. Duvall played the quiet but powerful role of Tom Hagen, while Pacino's Michael Corleone grew into one of the most iconic characters in cinematic history. Their performances in the film were unforgettable, and their off-screen friendship seemed as strong as the bond their characters shared. The two men had an unspoken understanding. They supported each other through the ups and downs of their rapidly rising careers. However, as the years went by and the Godfather saga continued, their once solid friendship began to fracture. The tipping point came during the production of The Godfather Part 3. By this time, both Duvall and Pacino had become established names in Hollywood. But when it came time to sign contracts for the third installment, things took a turn. The salary offers were drastically different. Pacino was offered $5 million plus 5% of the profits, a deal that reflected his status as the face of the franchise. On the other hand, Duvall was offered only $1 million flat, significantly less, despite his pivotal role in the first two films. For Duvall, this disparity wasn't just about money, it was about respect. He had helped build the foundation of the Godfather series, and to him, this unequal treatment was a direct insult. His sense of loyalty and fairness, which had defined him throughout his career, was shattered. It wasn't just about the paycheck, it was about the business side of Hollywood, which, in his eyes, had taken priority over the values that had originally united them. He walked away from the franchise, refusing to be part of something that no longer reflected his own moral code. Duvall's decision was also influenced by his personal belief in the importance of family. In interviews, he's spoken about how much The Godfather meant to him, not just as a film, but as a representation of what he saw as the core values of loyalty and respect. He once said, "Family is everything." But the family portrayed in the film didn't align with the real-life Hollywood family he had come to know. The betrayal wasn't just about money, it was about trust, about breaking the bond that had once been so strong. "I won't act in a film about family if that family doesn't respect each other," Duvall later remarked, underlining the principle that had led him to make such a dramatic decision. His refusal to return to The Godfather Part 3 was a powerful statement about his unwillingness to compromise his values for fame or money. It wasn't just about one film or one paycheck, it was about the very foundation of what made the story meaningful to him. In the years that followed, the tension between Duvall and Pacino became more apparent. While Pacino became the face of the Godfather franchise, earning acclaim and recognition for his role as Michael, Duvall quietly retreated to a different path. He took roles that felt more authentic to him, often in smaller films that didn't come with the same level of fame but offered a chance to remain true to his craft. Meanwhile, Pacino's career was marked by bigger, louder roles, a sign of the ambition that had always been a driving force for him. Duvall had no interest in playing that game. His decision to walk away from The Godfather Part 3 marked the beginning of a quiet rift that never truly healed. The two men never reconciled. Even when the cast reunited at the 2011 Oscars, they stood just a few feet apart, their faces blank and eyes intentionally avoiding each other. It was a symbol of how far they had drifted apart. The deep friendship they once shared had turned into a distant, silent rivalry. The world had seen the brotherhood, but now, all that remained was the absence of trust and respect. The betrayal wasn't just about money, it was about trust. But Pacino wasn't the only giant Duvall would distance himself from. The next one was someone he called his teacher. In the early days of Robert Duvall's career, there was no one more influential to him than Francis Ford Coppola. Duvall admired Coppola not just as a director, but as a visionary. When Coppola cast him as Tom Hagen in The Godfather, it was a career-defining moment. The role was not just a part, it was a chance to showcase his skills in a way that would shape his entire future. Duvall trusted Coppola completely, believing that the director saw him as someone with great potential. They shared a bond that went beyond the typical director-actor relationship. Coppola was a mentor to Duvall, guiding him through one of the most transformative roles of his life. During the filming of Apocalypse Now, their professional relationship deepened. Coppola and Duvall worked closely together for years, and at times, the director pushed Duvall to the limit, demanding the best from him, even when it came at a personal cost. One of the most infamous scenes from Apocalypse Now is the napalm scene, where Duvall's character, Colonel Kilgore, watches a bombing raid from the beach. To make the scene as powerful as possible, Coppola insisted that Duvall perform the scene in intense heat and under extreme conditions. Duvall, a man who had always prided himself on his dedication to his craft, pushed through the discomfort, despite the harsh environment. However, things went too far. During the filming of the napalm scene, Duvall collapsed from exhaustion and dehydration. His lips cracked from the heat, and his body was pushed to the brink of collapse. Despite this, Coppola insisted the scene be done again, not considering Duvall's condition. The director's indifference to Duvall's health left a lasting impact. To Duvall, it reflected a coldness, a level of detachment from the well-being of those who were helping bring his vision to life. Coppola's genius as a director was undeniable, but for Duvall, the experience left him questioning the price of such brilliance. As time went on, the relationship between Duvall and Coppola began to fray. The most significant point of contention came during the negotiations for The Godfather Part 3. Duvall, who had played such a key role in the first two films, was offered a fraction of what Al Pacino was being paid. Pacino, by then, had become the face of the franchise, but Duvall felt deeply insulted by the disparity. Coppola, the man who had once recognized his talent and given him the chance of a lifetime, was now part of an industry system that valued money and box office success over loyalty and respect. Duvall refused to return for the third film, citing the lack of fairness and the feeling that the values that had made The Godfather so meaningful were no longer being upheld. Coppola, ever the optimist, tried to mend their relationship. He sent handwritten letters of apology, attempting to convince Duvall to reconsider. But Duvall, firm in his stance, remained silent. He would not return to a franchise that no longer held the meaning it once did. In public statements, Duvall was clear about why he walked away. "I won't act in a film about family if that family doesn't respect each other," he told reporters, making his feelings clear. Despite Coppola's efforts, Duvall's refusal to participate in The Godfather Part 3 signaled a deeper rift between the two. What had started as admiration for Coppola as a mentor and director ended in bitterness and disappointment. Duvall's decision was about more than money. It was about the loss of something essential. To him, The Godfather had been about family values, about the trust and respect between characters. But the business side of Hollywood, as well as the changing dynamics of the franchise, had eroded those values. Coppola, who had once been a teacher, now seemed distant, as if the world of filmmaking had overtaken the principles that had once guided them both. The public fallout was the final nail in the coffin of their relationship, leaving Duvall with little interest in revisiting the world of The Godfather. Despite their falling out, Duvall's feelings of betrayal were not limited to Coppola alone. While he once saw Coppola as a mentor, the man who helped shape his career, he would soon find that other giants of Hollywood also turned out to be far different from what he had hoped. The trust that Duvall had placed in Coppola was shattered, but Coppola wasn't the only one who would disappoint him. The next name on Duvall's list was another legend from the very set of The Godfather, Marlon Brando. Before meeting Marlon Brando, Robert Duvall held the actor in the highest regard. Brando was, to Duvall, the epitome of greatness, an actor whose performances defined a generation of cinema. Duvall had studied Brando's work intensely, from A Streetcar Named Desire to On the Waterfront, and he revered the method and passion that Brando brought to his roles. To Duvall, Brando, he wasn't just an actor, he was a god of acting, someone whose artistry set the bar for everyone in the industry. Meeting him, for Duvall, was like meeting a legend in the flesh, a moment that he had always dreamed of. However, the reality of working with Brando on The Godfather quickly shattered the image that Duvall had constructed in his mind. Brando, despite his legendary status, proved to be far different from the idol Duvall had imagined. On set, Brando was often late, arriving hours after scheduled times, and when he did show up, he was rarely prepared in the way Duvall expected. Brando's eccentricities were legendary. He would refuse to follow the script, change his lines on a whim, and sometimes demand strange and unprofessional requests. For someone like Duvall, who valued precision and discipline in his craft, this behavior was shocking. To see Brando, an actor Duvall once idolized, acting with such carelessness was a blow to the respect Duvall had for him. The contrast between their approaches to acting could not have been more stark. While Duvall prided himself on being prepared, meticulous, and focused, Brando seemed to operate in a world where rules didn't apply. This chaotic, unprofessional behavior was especially frustrating for Duvall, who took his craft seriously. Duvall believed in giving everything to the role, to show up on set ready to perform with respect for the material, the director, and his fellow actors. Brando's lack of preparation and disregard for the script felt like an insult to the art they both shared. As the production of The Godfather continued, Duvall's admiration for Brando began to fade. The final straw came in 1973, when Brando rejected his Oscar for his performance in The Godfather. Instead of attending the ceremony to accept the award, Brando sent a Native American activist, Sachin Littlefeather, to decline it on his behalf, citing his protest against Hollywood's treatment of Native Americans. While Brando's protest was, in its own way, bold and admirable, Duvall felt deeply betrayed by his actions. It wasn't just that Brando had turned down the Oscar, it was the way he did it. By turning the prestigious moment into a political statement, Brando seemed to have disregarded the hard work of everyone who had contributed to the film, including Duvall. The Oscars were not just about the actor, but about the entire team, and Brando's public protest felt like a slap in the face to Duvall and the rest of the cast and crew who had worked so hard to bring The Godfather to life. Over the years, Duvall's feelings of disillusionment with Brando only grew. While Brando's actions could be interpreted as revolutionary or courageous, as to Duvall, they were a reflection of the chaos that had defined his career. The man who had once been his idol had become a cautionary tale, a symbol of what could happen when talent was left unchecked by discipline and respect for others. The deep respect Duvall once had for Brando had been replaced by resentment and disappointment. When Brando passed away in 2004, Duvall's feelings of betrayal came full circle. Despite their shared history, Duvall refused to attend Brando's funeral. This final act of distance symbolized the complete breakdown of their relationship. For Duvall, Brando was no longer the mentor, the legend, or the actor he had once looked up to. He had become a cautionary tale, a reminder of how unchecked brilliance could lead to personal and professional destruction. Duvall had learned the hard way that even the greatest idols had flaws, and sometimes those flaws could be too great to overlook. Brando, once a towering figure in Duvall's life, was now someone Duvall would rather forget. His refusal to attend the funeral was a final, definitive break from the man he had once admired. It wasn't just about the roles Brando had played, it was about the person Brando had become and how that person had failed to live up to the ideals Duvall once held dear. The man who Duvall once looked up to was no longer a mentor, he was a cautionary tale. But Brando wasn't the only one to disappoint Duvall. There was one more man, a legend in his own right, who Duvall had placed on a pedestal. This man was someone Duvall believed would be the greatest actor of them all. Stanley Kubrick was often hailed as one of the greatest directors in cinematic history, celebrated for his meticulousness, perfectionism, and visionary work. But for Robert Duvall, Kubrick's genius came at too high a cost, especially for the actors who worked with him. Duvall had a deep disdain for Kubrick's famous directorial method, which revolved around long takes and endless retakes. While Kubrick's obsession with achieving the perfect shot made for remarkable films, Duvall saw it as an act of cruelty. The endless repetition and the pressure to perform the same scene over and over again took a toll on the actors, draining them, emotionally and physically. Duvall, who believed in getting a scene right in a few takes, could never fully understand why Kubrick put actors through such grueling and unnecessary extremes. One of the most infamous examples of Kubrick's directing style came during the making of The Shining. The documentary Making The Shining exposed the cruel side of Kubrick's perfectionism, particularly in how he treated actress Shelley Duvall. During the filming of a key scene in which Shelley's character is being chased up a staircase, Kubrick ordered 127 takes of the same shot. By the time the scene was completed, Shelley was physically exhausted, mentally drained, and emotionally shattered. The documentary showed her struggling with the immense pressure, her hair disheveled, her face red from crying, and her body racked with exhaustion. Kubrick's refusal to let up only seemed to intensify her distress. Duvall, who had worked with some of the best directors in Hollywood, was horrified. He had always believed that actors should be treated with respect and their well-being considered. But Kubrick's approach seemed to view actors merely as tools to achieve a specific result, regardless of the personal cost. Duvall's own experience with Kubrick wasn't any less taxing. He had once been approached by Kubrick for a role in the Aryan Papers, but the meeting left him disturbed. Kubrick spoke to him for 30 minutes about lighting, camera angles, and rhythm, but never once about the emotional core of the character. The meeting felt cold and impersonal to Duvall, who believed that an actor's true connection with the character was paramount. He once described the atmosphere of the meeting as colder than a morgue, illustrating just how alienating and dehumanizing Kubrick's approach felt to him. Duvall's philosophy on acting was rooted in restraint and subtlety. He believed in letting the emotions of the character emerge naturally through performance, rather than forcing them through excessive takes or manipulative techniques. His style was grounded in silence and restraint, allowing the character to speak volumes without saying much at all. Kubrick's style, in contrast, was cold, calculated, and methodical, pushing for perfection at the expense of the actor's emotional integrity. Duvall's frustration with Kubrick wasn't just a personal issue, it was a philosophical difference that defined their contrasting views on acting. Kubrick's relentless pursuit of perfection through technical mastery left no room for the kind of emotional depth that Duvall valued. While Kubrick's films were often beautiful to watch, Duvall felt that the director's obsession with form drained the life out of the very performances he was trying to craft. In Duvall's eyes, Kubrick's perfectionism wasn't a path to better acting. It was a path to emotional exhaustion and, in many cases, personal breakdowns for the actors involved. His critical comments about Kubrick were clear. Duvall once said that Kubrick was a genius without a heart, referring to how the director's brilliance in filmmaking was marred by his lack of empathy for the people helping him create his work. Duvall's words cut to the core of what he saw as the dark side of Kubrick's genius, a total disregard for the emotional well-being of the actors who brought his vision to life. Duvall's criticism of Kubrick wasn't just about one film or one moment on set. It was about a deeper, more systemic issue with how Kubrick approached the process of making movies. For Duvall, acting was about the emotional connection between the actor and the character, and between the actor and the director. Kubrick, on the other hand, viewed his actors more as cogs in the machine of his vision, necessary but replaceable. This created a divide between them, one that Duvall could never reconcile. The respect he had for Kubrick's artistic vision was overshadowed by the cold, the methodical way the director treated the people who were supposed to be the heart of his films. Kubrick may have been a visionary, but to Duvall, he was an enemy of the very craft he loved. The way Kubrick pushed actors to their limits, drained them emotionally, and used them as tools for his cinematic perfectionism went against everything Duvall believed acting should be about. To Duvall, acting was about human connection, not about endlessly perfecting technical details at the cost of an actor's emotional state. Duvall's refusal to work with Kubrick after that experience was a clear rejection of a director who had lost sight of the very essence of acting. Next, we turn to a man who had mastered the art of transformation, but whose extreme approach to acting would also leave Duvall disillusioned. This man, like Kubrick, would push the boundaries of what it meant to be an actor, but not in a way that Duvall could ever accept. The rivalry between Robert Duvall and Robert De Niro began after their time working together on The Godfather Part 2. Both actors were already established in Hollywood, but it was during this film that their differences began to crystallize. While Duvall was known for his subtle, restrained approach to acting, De Niro was becoming a symbol of the extreme lengths an actor would go to in order to embody a role. De Niro's commitment to his craft was undeniable. He was willing to physically transform himself in ways that left audiences in awe. However, for Duvall, these transformations felt more like a masquerade than a true expression of the craft. To him, De Niro's extreme physical changes were not the mark of a true actor, but a distraction from the emotional depth that acting was truly about. De Niro became famous for his method acting, particularly for his role in Raging Bull, where he gained a significant amount of weight to portray the boxer Jake LaMotta. This dedication to physical transformation became a hallmark of De Niro's career, and he continued to apply it in various roles, undergoing dramatic weight changes, altering his appearance, and even immersing himself in the lives of the characters he played. The industry adored De Niro for his commitment, seeing these transformations as signs of his dedication to realism and his craft. But Duvall couldn't help but see them as superficial. To him, acting wasn't about gaining weight or losing it. It was about the emotion you brought to the character, the truth that you revealed through your performance, not through dramatic external changes. Duvall's acting style, in contrast, was more focused on restraint and emotional depth. He believed that an actor didn't need to change their body or adopt extreme physical characteristics in order to bring a character to life. For Duvall, the heart of a performance lay in the subtlety of the actor's expression, the way they conveyed emotion through small movements, a look, or a carefully timed silence. He thought the obsession with physical transformations in Hollywood was missing the point of acting itself. The true essence of a character could be revealed through the quiet moments, not through the loud, dramatic changes that De Niro was known for. This philosophical difference between Duvall and De Niro led to a quiet but palpable tension between the two actors. Duvall was vocal about his critique of method acting, particularly its extreme forms. While the industry celebrated actors like De Niro for their physical transformations, Duvall believed that such methods could strip actors of their true selves, leaving them trapped in their roles instead of allowing them to grow and evolve. In Duvall's eyes, the emphasis on physicality and dramatic changes was a crutch for actors who lacked the emotional depth and subtlety needed to truly bring a character to life. He often said that the work wasn't in the weight gain or the physical appearance, it was in the silence, the emotion, and the truth that an actor could convey without saying a word. To Duvall, the craze around method acting, particularly in Hollywood's obsession with physical transformation, was a dangerous trend. He saw how actors who relied on these techniques could lose themselves in their roles, unable to distinguish where the character ended and where they began. For him, acting wasn't about becoming someone else through physical means, it was about bringing parts of yourself into the role, using your own emotions and experiences to create a truthful and authentic portrayal. He believed that the more an actor relied on external changes, the further they strayed from the core of their craft. The rivalry between Duvall and De Niro was personal, not just because of their differing styles, but because Duvall saw in De Niro the kind of acting that he feared would eventually eclipse the subtler, more meaningful performances. De Niro was celebrated for his ability to transform, but to Duvall, that wasn't the true measure of an actor's skill. As the years passed, Duvall's discomfort with the method acting craze only grew. While De Niro's career flourished with more dramatic physical changes, Duvall chose to stay true to his own style, focusing on the emotional core of his characters, and he became more and more disillusioned with the direction Hollywood was going in. But the rivalry between the two actors wasn't just about acting styles, it also symbolized a larger shift in the industry. Duvall, once one of Hollywood's most respected figures, found himself on the outside of a trend that was quickly becoming the standard. His approach to acting was increasingly seen as outdated, while De Niro and others were hailed as the future of the craft. Duvall's silent rejection of the growing obsession with physical transformation marked the beginning of his quiet departure from the Hollywood spotlight, as he focused more on personal projects that allowed him to maintain artistic integrity. The tension between Duvall and De Niro didn't end in open conflict, but it remained a quiet undercurrent in their careers, a reflection of the changing tides in the acting world. Duvall's method was based on authenticity, restraint, and subtlety, while De Niro's method was based on transformation, intensity, and external change. In a way, their rivalry was a symbol of the two different paths. Acting could take the emotional and the physical, the subtle and the extreme. While De Niro's transformations became legendary in their own right, Duvall remained steadfast in his belief that true acting came from within, from the heart, not the body. The industry would continue to celebrate De Niro for his extreme approach, but for Duvall, that wasn't the mark of a true actor, it was just a mask. The rivalry between Duvall and De Niro was personal, but one final Hollywood figure left a scar that never healed. Winning an Oscar is a milestone that many actors dream of, and for Robert Duvall, it was a moment that should have marked the pinnacle of his career. His role in Tender Mercies, 1983, where he portrayed the troubled country singer Mac Sledge, earned him critical acclaim and ultimately led to his first Oscar for Best Actor. The performance was widely praised for its subtlety, depth, and emotional resonance qualities that had defined Duvall's approach to acting throughout his career. Yet, while most actors would have cherished the moment as the highlight of their professional lives, for Duvall, it became a reminder of a deep sense of betrayal and personal conflict. The production of Tender Mercies was anything but easy for Duvall. The film's director, Bruce Beresford, was known for his meticulous approach, but his insistence on endless retakes pushed Duvall to his breaking point. The tension between the two men grew throughout the filming process, as Duvall became increasingly frustrated with Beresford's direction. The director's "you need to capture the perfect shot" often resulted in long hours on set, with Duvall forced to repeat scenes over and over again. As an actor who valued honesty and emotional depth, Duvall found the constant retakes exhausting, particularly when he felt that the essence of the performance was being sacrificed in the name of technical perfection. For Duvall, acting was about capturing a moment of truth in time, not about endlessly chasing an unattainable ideal of perfection. Despite these challenges, Duvall's dedication to the role was unwavering, and his performance in Tender Mercies became one of the most celebrated of his career. The film, a quiet, intimate drama about redemption and personal healing, resonated deeply with audiences and critics alike. When Duvall won the Oscar, it seemed like a fitting recognition of his talent and commitment, but instead of basking in the joy of his achievement, Duvall felt the sting of a growing resentment toward Beresford and the way the working relationship had unfolded. The true breaking point came at the 1984 Academy Awards, when Duvall was awarded the Oscar for Best Actor. During his acceptance speech, Duvall made a pointed decision that would forever define his relationship with Beresford. As he stood at the podium, holding the golden statue, Duvall acknowledged the contributions of his fellow cast and crew, but when it came time to thank the director, he deliberately left Beresford's name out. Instead of offering the customary thanks to the man who had guided him through the project, Duvall stood in silence, refusing to recognize Beresford's role in his success. It was a public snub that left the industry stunned and forever cemented the bitterness that had grown between the two men during the making of the film. For Duvall, that moment at the Oscars was about more than just a personal grievance. It was a statement of principle. He felt that Beresford had pushed him too far during the production, and by refusing to acknowledge him at the height of his career, Duvall sent a clear message about the importance of artistic integrity. Winning the Oscar should have been a moment of triumph, but instead, it became a symbol of the tension that had boiled over during the making of Tender Mercies. The snub marked the beginning of a permanent rift between Duvall and Beresford, one that neither man could overcome. Despite the critical success of the film, their relationship never healed, and the Oscars incident would become a defining part of Duvall's legacy in Hollywood. This bitter moment at the Academy Awards was more than just a personal conflict. It became a part of Duvall's public persona. The incident with Beresford was widely covered by the press, and it cast a shadow over Duvall's career for years to come. The actor, who had once been known for his dedication to his craft, his focus on emotional depth, and his commitment to authenticity, was now seen through the lens of his public rejection of a director who had helped bring him to the Oscar stage. The story of Duvall's Oscar win was no longer just about his remarkable performance in Tender Mercies. It was also about the tension, pride, and frustration that had shaped his experience on set. For Duvall, the Oscar win became a double-edged sword. While it was undoubtedly a career achievement, it also served as a painful reminder of the personal cost of his success. The decision to snub Beresford in front of the world was a reflection of the emotional toll that working in Hollywood had taken on him. Duvall had always been a man who valued authenticity above all else, and when he felt that his artistic integrity had been compromised, he chose to speak out, even if it meant alienating those who had helped him reach the pinnacle of his career. The incident at the Oscars became a permanent scar in Duvall's relationship with Beresford, but it also shaped the way he approached his future work. In the years that followed, Duvall would continue to prioritize authenticity and emotional depth in his roles, choosing projects that allowed him to maintain artistic control and avoid the kind of toxic dynamics he had experienced on Tender Mercies. He would go on to write, direct, and produce films that reflected his values, including The Apostle, 1997, a film he both starred in and directed. For Duvall, the true work of an actor lay not in the spectacle of an award ceremony, but in the quiet, authentic moments captured on screen. The director may have been left behind, but Duvall proved that the true work is in the silence, not the spectacle. And that would become his legacy in Hollywood. Robert Duvall's journey through Hollywood has been anything but ordinary. From his early days as a hopeful actor to becoming a respected veteran, Duvall's career was marked by a deep sense of integrity and loyalty to his craft. He came to Hollywood with a clear vision of what acting meant to him, an art form, grounded in truth, emotional depth, and honesty. Over time, however, Duvall found that Hollywood, with its ambition and ever-present egos, was not always a place that aligned with his values. But despite the pressures and temptations of the industry, Duvall never compromised on his principles. He walked away from lucrative projects and iconic roles, choosing instead to stay true to the kind of work that resonated with him on a deeper level. His refusal to bow to the business side of Hollywood, where money and fame often overshadow artistic integrity, came at a personal cost. Duvall's relationships with some of the biggest names in the industry were forever changed, and his decisions to walk away from certain projects left him with a reputation as someone who wasn't afraid to speak out or go his own way. This was a man who valued loyalty, respect, and authenticity, qualities that were often in short supply in an industry driven by power, ambition, and image. The cost of loyalty in Hollywood is often high. Relationships that were once built on mutual respect and shared goals can quickly fracture when the stakes are raised, and the pursuit of fame and wealth takes precedence over personal values. Duvall's experiences with his so-called enemies were not just about personal grievances, they were about a larger system in Hollywood that valued celebrity and ego over the simple, unshakable truths that Duvall had always adhered to. While other actors may have bent to the will of the industry, Duvall chose to stand firm in his beliefs, even if it meant walking away from the glitz and glamour. Hollywood friendships and rivalries are often built on a foundation of ambition, but Duvall's career reminds us that true connections are harder to come by. Loyalty is a rare commodity in an industry that thrives on competition and the pursuit of personal gain. Yet Duvall showed that it's possible to maintain one's integrity without sacrificing what truly matters: family, respect, and the pursuit of meaningful work. His journey serves as a reminder that in a world where everything can be bought and sold, staying true to oneself is one of the hardest and most valuable things an actor can do. Duvall's enemies were not just Hollywood giants, they were symbols of a system that valued fame over family. And in the end, he chose to be remembered as an actor who never forgot his roots. His legacy is not just about the roles he played on screen, but the quiet strength he showed by standing up for what he believed in, even when it meant walking away from everything. In a world that often values spectacle over substance, Robert Duvall's life and career remind us that integrity and loyalty are worth more than any award or accolade Hollywood can offer.